Welcome back, everybody, to the Final How. And this week we got Indiana Conservation Officer Tevin Tomlinson back. Tevin, how we doing, man?
Doing well. Good to be back and ready for some of this warmer weather, turkey season. So.
Just right around the corner, isn't
That's
it?
right. Yeah, April 1 today. So
It's April Fools.
yeah.
So we're not joking anybody here.
That's right. This is real.
So what's been going on since the last time you were here? Anything interesting happen?
Just had some coyote hunters right there and checked several coyote hunters. Just getting into prepping for busy season coming up, and went down. I'm sure some people came down to the Boat Sport and Travel Show. Might have seen some of our guys there. The NASP, the National Archery in the Schools program. We had the state shoot down at the state fairgrounds not too long ago. So we had several hunter eds around in your county. So kiddos or even adults need to go, take a look online at our links, and you can probably find one near you. So
that's awesome. I started hearing about that archery program. That's pretty cool, I think.
Yeah. Yep, I agree. A lot of kids, some maybe that don't like to play sports, but really put their time and energy into this, and definitely something that they can, lifelong skill they can use, and it's really good.
Who's behind that mainly? Like, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so that's, like I said, a national thing. So it's all across the U.S. In Indiana, there's schools all across the state that have it. I believe one of the closest ones is Tippecanoe Valley. They have a team. Whitco, I believe, has a team. And but yeah, just really depends on, they need volunteers, of course, and they need enough kids to get interested in it. And from that point, they can develop a team. But our people involved with Hunter Ed and NASP, they can, assist in getting grants sometimes for schools to get bows and targets. So if you'd like more information on that, we can get that out to anybody that might be interested.
Yeah, I think that's an awesome program. For anybody in the outdoors.
Yeah, agreed.
Like, it helps give guys that other avenue, or people that other avenue.
Yeah, agreed.
Anything to get anybody outdoors, get the kids outdoors.
That's right.
That's an awesome thing.
Yep.
So we're going to talk a little bit about turkey regulations. And we've had some guys and gals send us some questions on Instagram and Facebook. So we weeded through those, picked out some for you to answer. And we're just going to go over the basic turkey regulations first. And for anybody that's wondering, unless he specifically says it's for public land, it's these, just kind of assume or shouldn't assume, but it's going to be private. If it has to do with public, we'll specify it's public. I know when we did the coyote episode, there was some confusion if it was public land or private land. So that's kind of how we're going to do this, is it'll mainly be private. All rules apply unless it's something special, then we'll say it's for public land or private land. So I guess if you kind of want to start off with, the season dates and youth season coming up.
Yeah.
Kind of start from there on the basic regulations, and we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah. Give me 1 second. So, we can, maybe that'll lead into, might start with that question on how can hunters get Indiana DNR to move turkey season up a couple weeks.
Yes.
So, per Indiana Administrative Code, an individual may hunt wild turkeys in the spring from the first Wednesday after April 20th and continuing for an additional 18 consecutive days. So the reason behind that, right, as hunters, you may think you have more opportunity maybe before that timeline of when you can start hunting. But we also need those toms to go and breed those hens, so that way we have, continued stock of those male birds, and of course female birds too. So to answer that question on, moving season up a couple weeks may not be in the best interest of hunters, even though we might think it is. But that's why the biologists in the state have it set the way that they do. So that answers that question. But yeah, we'll get in here to season dates. Let me pull up a couple things here.
Yeah, and I think that's where, I mean, I'm greedy too, like anybody else. Like, it's the earlier the season, it seems like they are a little bit easier to call before they start getting henned up.
Mm-hmm.
In Indiana, it always seems like, we do fall right in when our season comes in. You might only have a couple days there, and then you're about in that period where they're just henned up and they're harder to call.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a reason behind that. These biologists years ago, was just 25, 30 years ago, at least in the northern part of the state, where they released a lot of these turkeys.
I believe that's correct, yeah.
And these guys, these gals, whoever it was at the state that set these, it's for the best interest of the turkey, and with the popularity growing with turkey hunters, I as a hunter, yes, I'd like to see maybe moved up, but also it's there for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
It's the biologists, I feel, in our state do a good job of not like ballot box biology
mm-hmm.
like some other states to
mm-hmm.
where, it's detrimental.
Yeah.
Turkeys are a real, I think, they can easily go away as quick as they came.
Yeah.
It seems like everything's out to kill them.
Mm-hmm. Yep. A lot of nest predators. Yep. Things of
Yeah.
that nature. So, so this year youth season is April 19th and 20th. And then for those 18 and older, April 23rd is going to be your first day that you can get out there, get after them, and you're good till May 11th. So that's what our season dates are for the year. And then in terms of the time of day, half an hour before sunrise, and then you have till sunset. Okay, that's different than deer season, right? So just remember that. Sunset, set a little timer on your phone or something, vibrate, right? Can't have those turkeys hearing it. Hey, my hunting's done. So
right, and that's definitely a good one, because I know sometimes that'll get me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In the spring, you just, especially if you get on one that last minute.
Yeah.
It's not till a half hour after. It's still pretty light.
Right. Right.
So that can get you in the heat of the moment.
Yep. So just make sure to pay attention to that time. So.
Right. Awesome. That's a real good one to touch on. Yeah. So, what's I guess to kind of lead into some more of these questions, what are some common mistakes you see guys make in the field?
Yeah, so some common mistakes in terms of licensing, buying, it'd just be not having a game bird habitat stamp. So remember, if you're going to hunt turkeys, whether that's spring or fall, you got to have that specific turkey license, so spring turkey tag, and you have to have that game bird habitat stamp. And that game bird stamp carries you all the way through into the fall. Okay, so if you hunt turkeys again in the fall, though, you're going to need a fall turkey tag, but you don't have to buy a secondary game bird habitat stamp. Okay, so just to clarify, spring turkey, you need a spring turkey tag and the game bird stamp. Fall turkey, you need a fall turkey tag and the game bird stamp, but if you purchased it in the spring, no need to purchase it again in the fall.
So you're, like this year, for an example, it's 2025. So I buy my 2025 game bird stamp. Mm-hmm. It's good from essentially January 1st to December 31st. Mm-hmm. Correct? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, and I would have to check exactly when it expires. It may go a little bit after that calendar year. But yeah, in terms of the turkeys, you're good spring and fall if you just buy it here in the spring.
Okay.
So, because there is some other birds that you need it for. Like I said, it may push past that, December 31 calendar year timeline.
Okay. So. Maybe be a good time too, since we're talking about licenses, kind of go into, we had a question about landowners mm-hmm. and farmers. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that question, as a landowner and the possible damage the birds cause to farmers' crops, do landowners and farmers need a license to kill? So as landowners, right, say, whether you own 100 acres, 1,000 acres, okay, you yourself, as a landowner, you can kill one male or bearded bird in the spring. Okay, it's not two, one male and one bearded, right? It's one bird in the spring. It's got to be a male or a bearded hen. So you only get the one. So you still have to check that bird in online, or you can call in. Also, there's a phone number for that. There might be a fee associated with the call. So you still have to check it in, and when you go to check in, there's a drop-down box for license type, and you're going to click on landowner exemption. Okay, as a landowner, you do not need to, you don't need to have a spring turkey tag, and you do not need to have the game bird habitat stamp. Okay, that's a perk that the state gives to landowners that they don't then have to purchase that license. So if you're a farmer and you're having issues with turkeys, you hear those stories, right? Oh, I put my seed in the ground and that turkey goes down that row and it pulls out every seed. I've heard that. So, if you have trustworthy people that you can call, they turkey hunt, right? They're still only allowed the one bird for the whole state, one male bird in the spring, and then one bird of either sex in the fall. Call them and have them bring their buddies to come hunt out on your property. If it's still a really big deal, they're still doing a lot of damage, you can contact your local biologist. They can get you in touch and possibly get you kind of on the route to a depredation permit. If the biologist, they may come out, they may give you a phone call if they feel that that's the right course of action at that point in time. So you can, if you're interested in looking into those depredation tags, go online to the Indiana DNR website, then go to Fish and Wildlife, click on licenses and permits, and then click on permits and commercial licenses. I'll give Zach a phone number here and an email. We'll maybe put in the comments, but phone number for that, for a possible depredation tag, is 317-232-4200, or you can email the Division of Fish and Wildlife at dfw@dnr.in.gov. So, they're going to have some questions for you, right? Just because, you're interested in one doesn't necessarily mean they're going to hand it to you. But those are some ways that you can get that, maybe get some more birds harvested in your area. And I'll hit on too, as a landowner, the equipment rules still apply. So just because you see the turkeys out your back door, you can't take your 30-06 and shoot one at 400 yards. You still have to go by all the equipment regulations, the time regulations, a male bird in the spring, right? So everything still applies. Your only exemption is you don't need the spring turkey tag and you don't need that game bird habitat stamp.
Okay, that's what I was getting ready to ask you. So you don't need either the habitat stamp at all. And is there a minimum acre requirement to be a landowner?
So it's a good question. And there is not a minimum acreage. I have here the definition, and if anybody's interested, you guys can go to the Indiana Code, be Indiana Code 1422.11.1, farmland, license requirements and conditions. As used in this section, farmland means agricultural land that is devoted or best adaptable for the production of crops, fruits, timber, and the raising of livestock, or assessed as ag land for property tax purposes. So my apologies, your original question before I dive even further into this about the land. So yeah, no minimum acreage requirement. Yeah, you got 20 acres, you got trees on there, maybe you do a selective harvest every 8 to 10 years, you're good. That's your land. You would not need that spring turkey tag or that game bird stamp to go and harvest a bird on your property. Okay,
maybe this is where you're going to dig in further, but who falls underneath that? So if, me, my wife, and our kids, or is it just the person that's named on the deed?
Yep. So here, say at your property, Zach. So yeah, say if you and your wife and your kids, so if they live in your household and they live on your property, technically, all of you could shoot a bird on your property. So if, say you had a kid that turns, 21, moves out, lives at another place, he can no longer claim landowner at mom and dad's unless it's in a living trust and he's listed as a trust beneficiary. So in terms of the ag land and a business like a farm business, that can get pretty deep in the weeds. If you do have a specific question on, say, hey, we have an LLC, a farming LLC, this is who all is part of it, what's the rules and regs on who can claim landowner and who cannot, reach out, put something in the comments and I'll get in touch with them specifically so we don't, maybe take up a ton of time to dive real far in, but we do want to get that question answered if you have it.
Yeah, because I know I've been asked that, or I've heard talks of that before of, how far does that go, especially at these bigger farms. They may own, let's say, 4,000 acres. Everybody works for that farm. They're all part of it. It could be a dad and 4 boys or 4 kids. How exactly will that apply to that?
Yeah. So a lessee of farmland who farms that land is a resident of Indiana, and the spouse and children living with the lessee may hunt, fish, and trap without a license on leased land. This subdivision does not apply to land that is owned, leased, or controlled by and leased from the department. An individual who, that gets into youth. Let me flip back here. So yeah, I will.
So if they lease a farm, if that is how I'm understanding that, is you may not be, like, for an example, I lease, say, my farm here, and to a farmer to row crop it. Does that farmer still have to buy a license to come hunt my property even though he leases it? Or does he, how does that read exactly then?
Yeah.
Because I own it, but he leases it to farm.
Right. So a lessee of farmland, right? So he's leasing your farmland, who farms that land and is a resident of Indiana, and the spouse and children living with the lessee may hunt, fish, and trap without a license on that leased land.
Okay.
So if 10 acres on your ground, you lease it to him, he can technically come and hunt here. If you as the landowner still hold, right, it's in your name. So
right.
You can tell him, hey, I hunt here, you're not allowed to hunt here. But if you're like, yeah, you can come over, he technically would not need a license at that point. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I think that answers that question,
okay.
I believe.
Good deal. If people have any more questions relative to how the business is classified, reach out and we can get into that more.
Right. All right. And then the next one I got on here is, well, I guess we never really, to move that, kind of just skip back to that original question about moving the season up. Like, I would say that would be more of that's all in legislative, right?
Yeah. So, I'm glad you came back to it. So, yeah, of course, right, look at it from the biological point we talked about, but if you still want to talk to someone, you can do that, okay? So if you, once again, go back to the Indiana DNR webpage, go click on Fish and Wildlife, then Fish and Wildlife Resources and Wildlife Biologists. So the state is sectioned off, and there's certain biologists that cover certain counties in the state. So you can find the one that covers the county that you live in, and you can talk to them specifically about it. Another great thing that the general public can get involved in is Indiana has a Natural Resource Commission. So they usually meet every other month. Okay, the next meeting is May 20th. They meet in Indianapolis at Fort Harrison State Park, but you can join in online. You can participate online, and they hear many different things relative to rules and regulations for fish and wildlife. At their last meeting, the big talk was the bobcat regulations, and what that is going to look like most likely here coming up. But you can, they hear, and you can they have a petitioning process through the Natural Resource Commission that you can weigh in and possibly create a petition to, get something changed. So, once again, that's the Indiana Natural Resource Commission. So, general search engine, search that, it should pop right up.
Okay. So there you go. That answers that. If you want to petition to have the season moved up, it would take some time. It would definitely take some time to get that done. Next question we got here. Is a salt block considered bait for turkeys? Currently have a salt block out for deer. Might hunt that property for turkeys. Do they need to be removed before season?
Yes, it is considered bait. Yes, they do need to be removed before season. And remember that area would be considered baited for 10 days even after that removal. Okay, so if you got salt blocks out and you want a turkey hunt after you hear this today on April 1, get out there. If you do have salt licks or mineral licks, trophy rocks, whatever it might be, even if it's, it's my supplemental feeding for deer, I'm sure your trail cams, I'm sure you get some turkeys coming by there, right? Turkeys will scratch the ground, trying to get some mineral out of there. So make sure that you remove also that affected soil where that salt lick, right? Spring rain's going to cause that salt to leach into the ground. Okay, as we all know, deer will come and, of course, continue to paw at that. Turkeys will come back too, so you have to remove that affected soil. But short answer, yes, it's bait. Yes, it needs to be removed if you're going to turkey hunt that.
How do you determine if you've removed all of the effective soil? Because I know of, I've had places where I put a trophy rock out and there hasn't been one there for 3 years. And there's still a bare spot there. And I mean, a hole the size of a bed of a truck where over the years, they've just always pawed there. So how do you determine you have removed enough to satisfy the law?
So what we recommend is you remove that dirt, right? Indiana's not like, you have to remove a 6-foot radius around your salt lick or your mineral site. There's no set distance or set depth of dirt that you have to remove. But, as reasonable people, let's think reasonably, right? Like, let's dig down a decent ways. Let's dig out a decent ways. Probably the best thing, too, would be to bring back in fill dirt that's, not been affected by your salt or mineral that you've had out. Put that in there, and then, it may even be reasonable. Take a big sheet of plywood after you do all that, put it down and put a cinder block on it, so that way there's probably no chance that they're going to come in there and be able to utilize, that mineral. They're not going to be attracted to the bait site during season. So, best judgment, if you have questions, reach out to us. Like I said, we'd much rather deal with it prior to and help you out. And, if you have a different scenario on your property, give us a call. We can chat about it. So that's
how close would you have to hunt to that for it to be considered you're hunting over bait? Like, for an example, let's say here on this farm, if I have a camera with a mineral block at the very far back corner of it, if I kill a turkey 300 yards away here at the front of the property, would that still be considered hunting a baited property? I mean, how far? I guess that's kind of my question, is how far or how big of a property does it have to be for you to remove it? Because if you have sold out for deer, that might be 600 yards away from your turkey hunting spot, but it's the same property. Do you still have to remove it, or is it because it's not in sight, it's fine?
So the law reads hunting with the aid of bait. So if you set up your 300 yards away, right? We'll keep with this scenario, 300 yards away from this mineral site, and you got your nice cell cam out there, and at this time, I've been having the turkeys come here to my mineral site. Maybe you got a little water hole there too, whatever. And they've been coming here, and that they like to roost over here, and you're set up, in between there. That technically still be with the aid of bait, yes. That they're going to travel that route to get to that location. So, so it very well could be Indiana. There's no minimum or maximum distance away from bait. It's hunting with the aid of the bait. So, that's how we look at it. And biggest thing, just if you don't put yourself in that situation, just go pick your stuff up, get some fill dirt, put it in there, get out that contaminated dirt, put the fill dirt in. Not a huge deal. Don't sit there and stress out about, or is game warden going to come? I'm going to be 400 yards away from it. Just pick it up. That 10 days prior, do your due diligence as an outdoorsman, as a hunter, and like we just talked about, and those steps to make sure they're not going to come there as an attractant during season. That's all you got to do. So, and
kind of on top of that, a question I've often had too, and I've seen, is how's it looked upon if your neighbor has a mineral block out that you may not be aware of, but they've got it stuck, say, 5 yards on the other side of the fence, and they've refused, this is my, this is where the turkeys roost at, this is where I want to set up on my property. But the neighbor's got a salt block on the other side of the fence 25 yards away from me, and he won't remove it. Is it illegal for me to hunt my side of the fence? How does that work?
So if we've had that, right? Had that scenario mainly with deer, but it can be with turkeys also. So in that case, right, like you talked about, say you tried to talk to your neighbor and you're just like, this is my property. I'm going to do what I want to do, which he can, in that regard, it's his property. And, say the turkeys roost and they're going to come right by where you're going to set up to, go get some mineral and come by and, maybe he's got corn out too, eat that and say, give us a call, because it's still technically, even though it's not on your property, like if it's there, you've seen the turkeys over there prior to, things of that nature, could fall within that. Is that looked at a little bit differently? Maybe. Give us a call on that. That's kind of a little more of a unique situation. But in terms of, what a hunter can control and his mineral sites he has out, just do your due diligence. But in that situation, give us a call. We'll come check it out. If that salt lick is on your neighbor's property and you want to hunt in this area, just give us a call.
Okay. That sounds reasonable. And our next question is
The point system question?
Yep.
Okay.
What's the deal with the new point system in Indiana?
Yeah, so I just got educated on this recently. So some of you have probably seen, and today's April 1, okay, everybody's old fishing license expired, so you got to have your new one. So if you haven't been on that system, you'll get on there today to buy your fishing license and turkey license. But Indiana switched over in December to a new licensing point-of-sale system. So within that, there's some other capabilities that it has that the other system did not. So one of them is the point system. So it's not quite like, maybe some of your big out west hunts or your Iowa deer hunts, right, putting in your points. But we'll use an example. Say you put in for the Mississinawa turkey draw this spring. Say you did not get drawn, so now you have one preference point. So you put in for it next year, so you're going to have a better chance of getting drawn next year than you did this year. Now, once you get drawn, that point goes away, and you have to restart. So each point is species specific. So you put in for a waterfowl draw at Goose Pond for waterfowl, and you don't get drawn, then you'll have that point, and that'll be specifically for waterfowl draws. Okay, same with turkeys, specific points for turkey, same with deer, and that will be on your public properties, and that's what that looks like. So it's not quite like maybe some of the other states, but that's how Indiana's doing it.
So as far just to clarify, on private land, and I mean, I guess I don't know much about some public spots, but you can still there's no point system. I can just still go buy my Indiana turkey license to hunt on private ground.
That's correct.
And not be affected by this point system.
That's correct.
Point systems being used for the public lands that are draw.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep. And that's basically, in the generalities, that's basically it. So, yep, that's how that's going to work. And they were not able to carry over those points from the previous system. So everybody's kind of starting fresh with this new system. So, yep.
Right. And that just kind of helps avoid to where, like, you know, the same person doesn't get drawn back to back.
Possibly, yeah. Like it helps give people a better chance, give everybody a better chance of getting out there on those draws.
Right. Like, I forget what it's called, but I know, like, the Kentucky elk draws that way. It's just, there's no point system. It's just the luck of the draw.
Is it?
Yeah. You just put in, I've put in for it now for, I don't know, 6 years, 7 years.
Yeah. No, they always advertise in our Indiana hunting and fishing books to hunt Kentucky elk. So.
Oh, it'd be a great opportunity, but you hear a lot of people complain about that, just how, you know, some people have been drawn twice for it. And then there's guys that, you know, you could probably go a lifetime and never get drawn for it.
Yeah. Interesting, the differences between each organization. And
it really is. That's I think the preference point's a good idea, just because that kind of makes it more fair across the board to where somebody can't get drawn over and over, and a guy's putting in for 4 years and never been drawn. So that's a pretty neat deal, I think.
Yeah. I've got a few other points here, Zach. Just spoke with another officer, you know, maybe some other things that we commonly see. And we talked about this before the podcast started. So if you're going to go call turkeys for another person, if you're calling, you know, they're behind the gun, you still need the proper licensing for turkeys, you know, for the spring. Now, if you go and harvest your bird and then you're calling for a buddy, you're good, right? You already bought your licenses, you checked in your bird, you're good to do that. But when you're calling, you know, if you're holding a fan, right, you're crawling on the ground while your buddy's next to you with a gun, you know, you're in pursuit of that turkey. You're playing a role in that, so that's why you need your licenses. So dads, if you're going to take sons or daughters out youth weekend, you need to have the proper licensing for that. So that's something we get a question on quite a bit. Another one, you don't need a plug in your turkey gun. Okay, turkeys are not a migratory bird like doves or ducks and geese, so you technically don't need a plug. I mean, if you got more than 3 shots at a turkey, that'd be impressive. I mean, if you didn't hit him hard on the first one, he's moving at a pretty good tick, I'd be surprised to get 5 shots off. But hunting hours, once again, half hour before sunrise to sunset. Also, another question we get pretty often is about youth licenses. Say, hey, my kid, you know, he turns 18 in July, but right now he's still a youth. So, you know, how's that work, say, after July when he's now 18? But he bought his youth license and, you know, he was 17 when he bought it. How's that work? So he is still good, he or she is still good to hunt on that youth license until that expires, even though they're now 18. The thing that changes is if, you know, say they want to hunt on a youth weekend, they have to be 17 or younger on that weekend. Okay, so even if, you know, come fall, come youth deer weekend, okay, he's now 18, still validly hunting on the youth license, but because he bought it before he was 18, he cannot hunt on that youth weekend because he's 18. Okay, 17 or younger for the youth weekend. Is that clear? Zach?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Just want to make sure. That's a question we get quite a bit. And for the youth hunt trap, they don't need to buy the game bird stamp. Okay, that youth license is a youth comprehensive. That will cover it.
Okay.
That will cover it. And another thing we see pretty often can happen during the youth season, right? Dad, uncle, somebody else sitting there telling the kiddo when to shoot, right? Usually a whole flock of birds that come in, right? You got your dominant tom, and you may have another tom, maybe some jakes. Okay, when you go to call the shot, make sure those birds are separated far enough so that way we're not doing the old 2 birds, 1 shot, 2 male birds down, and just be patient. Be patient with that so that way, it doesn't happen. So that way, there's birds in the future. Like we're taught in hunter ed, identify your target and what is beyond it. So
right,
same principle there.
So along those lines, like you covered, you don't have to have a plug. So you can, if you have a gun that holds 5 shots, you can have 5 in. It's not a big deal. So the calibers that are legal, gauges. Do you have a list of what is legal and also shot size? With TSS being, the new thing, is TSS legal in the state of Indiana? And how's that work to public grounds?
So I'll do a quick shout. Thanks, Officer Whitehead, for your input on some of those last few points. He was big on a couple of those, so thanks for that. So going to your gauges. So this is in the 312 IAC, which is the Indiana Administrative Code 9411, which governs hunting wild turkeys in Indiana. So you can, of course, use a bow or crossbow, right? Your bow has to be a minimum of 35-pound draw. Crossbow, minimum of 125-pound draw. And then for your gauges, shotgun or muzzleloading shotgun, it's a 28 gauge, 20 gauge, 16 gauge, 12 gauge, 10 gauge, or 410. Okay. Loaded only with a shot size of 4s, 5s, 6s, 7s, 7.5s, or smaller. Shot size smaller than 7.5s must be comprised of tungsten super shot TSS or equivalent pellet density only. Shot sizes of equal or greater diameter than 6 shot up through including 4 shot must have a density composition equal to or less than 15 grams per cubic centimeter. So you guys that reload, it's more your lingo there at the end. So, but TSS is big now. We see that pretty often, right? 410s and TSS. That's been a pretty big deal in the last couple of years. So
right,
but
it's especially popular with the youth too. With youth getting into it, a lot of guys, it's such a light recoil, and I mean the patterns you're getting out of a 410 with some of this TSS is crazy good.
Yep, it is. You may pay a little bit more for the round, but if you can be lethal at such a great yardage with a 410, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I just watched a video last night of guys comparing 410s, 20, 28s, all the way down to 10, and with TSS. And I think they were out 40 yards with a 410 with number 9 TSS. They were still putting 100, I think it was like 128 pellets.
Wow.
At 40 yards with a 410. That was nuts.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
How far did they get back with the 10 gauge?
I think they just maxed all the tests at 50 yards.
Did they?
But the 10 gauge was crazy, and they were just shooting regular lead with it, because I don't think anybody has TSS for 10 gauge.
10 gauge,
But it was still superior to everything else. I mean, you got to be a full-blown man to go rip at a 10 gauge. But right. It was impressive. It really was.
Very neat. So, but that's what we're looking at for shot sizes and gauges there. So, I mean, so I guess we kind of touched on everything there, the questions and the law. So if you could, you got any, I guess, good, crazy stories of what you've ran across with turkey hunters? Can you tell any of those? Or do you have one that sticks out? So I've been on a little over 3 years. In my area, I haven't run into anything too crazy. I know guys across the state, southern Indiana, going back to knowing your target and what's beyond it, right? Just because it looks like a turkey in the brush, confirm it's a turkey. I know in southern Indiana, some of our guys worked a case. Somebody got shot by another turkey hunter on public ground, thought it was a turkey. Keep that in mind. Remember, if you're going to use a drone, that's for recovery. We talked about that for deer. Don't don't be flying that drone above your blind to try and get a cool camera angle, right? Because that can aid in your hunt. The 2 turkeys, with 1 shot, that seems to happen somewhat often. And just remember, you got to be off the roadway too. No pagan turkeys from the roadway. No pagan turkeys from your vehicle. Side by side, right? Let's as hunters remember those fair chase principles, and give that turkey the respect it deserves, and enjoy the challenge of the hunt. But yeah, remember, there can be, we talked about like mineral licks and, salt specifically, right? There can be a wide array of, potential things that'll bring a turkey in. So just remember, go back to the fair chase principle. Just work hard and learn the bird, learn the call, and that sort of thing. And I think that'll help you out quite a bit. You don't need that other stuff to harvest one. So,
what is the off the roadway? So, I'm sure there's going to be somebody ask this question, or ask me why I didn't ask the question. But what is that? So it's on the other side of the ditch into the field. You're good. What's considered the roadway, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's no minimum distance off of the roadway that you have to be to harvest a bird, but you need to be off the road, right? What a reasonable person consider the road as, the gravel, the asphalt, that sort of thing. So, be off the roadway.
Right.
So, but no minimum distance. There's other states you hunt out of state, and that you may run into that. Birds coming out close to the road. Just be aware in other states it is different. So.
Yeah, and to touch kind of back on that, I can't remember if I asked this or if I answered it. When somebody's tagging along and running a video camera and videoing your hunt, they're not calling. They have nothing. Are they okay to do that without a license?
So, yeah, if they're just videotaping, not holding a decoy, not calling, and they're just videotaping, then they do not need a license in that regard. They're not assisting you by calling that bird in or, holding the fan up, anything like that, then they're good. They do not need a license for just the videotaping.
Okay, I just wanted to, I couldn't remember if I made that exact point, though, running the camera, but.
Yep, good one to bring up.
Okay, which I would think generally most people, if they're out, they've got their license, I would think.
Yep.
Even if, I think that was a question I think that was asked, is if somebody's already killed, are they still okay to go and call for somebody else?
Yes, they are.
Yes, they are.
Yep.
Okay. I think that was a question that was asked. Now that I remember, I think it was, but.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and that made me think, remember, after you harvest your bird, you have 48 hours to check it in. That's 2 days. When you go to leave the property that you were hunting on to, take it back to your house to, butcher and celebrate, make sure you have a temporary transport tag on there with the necessary information, date you killed it. Of course, sex of the bird is going to be a male. Time you killed it. Your address, your name, that sort of thing. So have that temporary transport tag, and that can be on, a napkin wrapped around the bird's ankle with a zip tie. Just something on there. So.
Is it still sufficient though if I shoot one out in the field and I just get on my phone, check it in right then on my phone, and then screenshot the confirmation, or do I have to have that transportation tag, handwritten tag?
Yeah, put a transport tag on there too. Of course, that's the best way to do it is to check it in right away so you don't forget to do that later on. But, yeah, go ahead and throw a transport tag on there too. Like I said, it doesn't have to be on a specific piece of paper or anything, but, yeah, put that information on there also just until you get it back to your house. If you go and gift a turkey to somebody, say you just like to hunt, you don't necessarily like to eat them, then, make sure you give them a little receipt. Hey, this is from Zach Feigert. He shot it this date, this time, and gifted it to me so and so on this date. So just so we can keep track of it, we get some information as long as we can track it down, and everything's good in that regard.
All right. I think that pretty much sums up all the questions I have.
Yeah.
I guess if you covered everything you'd like to cover.
Yeah, and I can, just like I did last time, I'll give out our dispatch number.
Yep.
So that way you guys have that handy. Or if there's anything that comes to mind relative to what we talked about, you can call in. Just let them know who you are, what county you're in, and they'll get an officer to answer your questions. But our Indiana Conservation Officer dispatch phone number 812-837-9536. And Indiana does have it's called a TIP program. Okay, turn in a poacher, turn in a polluter. So so-and-so likes to drive down the road and shoot turkeys from the road. You can remain anonymous. You can call into 1-800-TIP-IDNR. And, if that case, we as officers were able to make that case with that information you gave us, there's a possibility for you to get some money, because we really appreciate those tips and, in an effort to conserve wildlife into the future. So that's another phone number you can call. Like I said, you can remain anonymous on there. Even on our dispatch, you can remain anonymous. So, calling with questions, calling with tips, we appreciate them all. So.
All right, sounds good.
Yep.
And I also want to add, I strongly encourage anybody, if you haven't already, you need to be joining the NWTF Turkeys for Tomorrow. Go out, shoot your guns, make sure you're patterned tight, and shoot straight. Thank you, everybody.
Yep. Thank you.